Video games are awesome. They engage us in a life of a character or group of characters and let us experience a journey with them. We can feel their emotions and pain, and we feel like we're fighting as the character or characters for a common goal. Groups of characters basically make up different gaming worlds, which we know best as franchises. For this list, I will be honoring my favorite franchises. This is my top 10 favorite video game franchises. First, some rules for the list. In order to be considered a franchise, it must have at least 2 games in its library, and I must have played at least 2 games in that franchise. This way, I get a fair view of whether I like a franchise, instead of just saying that I like one game in the franchise, and therefore the entire franchise is good. Second and last rule, this is my list, so if you disagree with the placement of a franchise, then feel free to comment your list. I would love to see what all of you guys think. Also, on top of giving my favorite franchise, I will be giving my favorite game of each said franchise, which can include spin-off games, as it will in one example. Other than that, every franchise that I have ever played will be taken into consideration. So, let's begin the countdown. The first franchise to make my list is the addicting and family-friendly Wii Sports franchise. This franchise is well known for relaxing games, as well as games that can increase your heart rate, and the games are just generally a lot of fun. My favorite game in this franchise is Wii Sports Resort. It added quite a few more options for games than the original Wii Sports, and all of them were just addicting to play. My favorites were the fencing, the game where you had to fend off hordes of Miis with a lightsaber, and the game where you had to explore the island on an airplane. Overall, the Wii Sports franchise is just addicting and incredibly fun, which puts it at number 10. Number 9 is the Blue Blur himself, Sonic the Hedgehog. As the main competition to the beloved Mario franchise, Sonic's games must be good, and boy do they not let down. I don't think that there's a single Sonic game that I don't like, since I haven't played Sonic 06, and I actually liked Sonic and the Secret Rings. Don't ask why, I'm just weird. Some of my favorite Sonic games are Sonic and the Black Knight, Sonic Colors, and my personal favorite is Sonic Unleashed. Sonic is known for fast gameplay, but Sonic has never been faster than in Unleashed. I mean, just look at this. That's enough to make somebody nauseous. That's just incredible. Not only was the gameplay incredibly fast on the daytime stages, but I actually liked the Werehog stages. Sure, they were different, but they were also really fun. However, the reason Sonic is so low on this list is because although his games are good, none of them stand out to me as the best ever. But that doesn't prevent me from loving the lovable characters and high-speed gameplay that make up the Sonic franchise. Keep on running, Sonic. I was never a fan of tactical RPGs. That is, until I was introduced to the Fire Emblem series. This originally Japan-only franchise was brought to the United States due to the popularity of Marth and Roy in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and thank God they brought it over to the States, because not only was it very well received, but it was so much fun. Fire Emblem games all have engrossing stories, lovable characters, and awesome battle systems. The gameplay in Fire Emblem games is a beautiful combination of strategy with RPG elements. Without question, my favorite game in the franchise is Fire Emblem Awakening, but I'm sure you all saw that coming. The game was just so perfect. It had an awesome story, a cast of characters that was incredibly lovable, and the battle system had some quirks to it that made it really good. The marriage system and the ability to play either classic or beginner mode really made the game stand out. For those of you who have never tried this incredible franchise, just play Awakening for the 3DS. I guarantee you will be hooked after that. Fire Emblem is an amazing series, and the only series that has gotten me into tactical RPGs ever. Just play the series. It's incredible. You will not regret that choice. And now for the franchise that completely revived RPGs everywhere. Number 6 is Final Fantasy. Probably the most well-known non-Nintendo franchise, Final Fantasy is known for engrossing stories, awesome characters, and the best turn-based combat available. What could possibly be my favorite Final Fantasy game with all the trillions of entries in the series? It's Final Fantasy VI, right? Well, actually, I haven't finished that game yet. Then it must be 7. Nope. I haven't gotten the opportunity to play 7. So, what could it possibly be? My favorite Final Fantasy game is Final Fantasy IV, but even that didn't make the list. Remember when I said a spin-off would make the list? Well, this is that example. My favorite Final Fantasy game is Bravely Default. I know it doesn't technically count as a Final Fantasy title, but it takes place in a Final Fantasy world and is strikingly similar to the original Final Fantasy title, so I'm counting it. This game is just too good to pass up, though. The story, though it's been done to death, is still awesome, and it has some modern twists to it. The characters are awesome, hilarious, and lovable, and the battle system is the best I've ever seen in turn-based battles. To put it short, the battle system is the same as standard turn-based, but with the option to default, or guard and store a BP, or Braid, which is to use BP and attack more than once a turn. The gameplay makes this game and adds a huge layer of strategy to an already awesome game. Plus the music. Bravely Default has one of the, if not the best soundtrack of all time. Watch my top 10 Bravely Default video if you want to hear some of the tracks. If you haven't played a Final Fantasy game, or don't know if you will like turn-based combat, play Bravely Default, and I believe that you will be hooked on the genre of RPG as a whole, as well as the Final Fantasy franchise. Number 6 is Kirby. He may be a super cute little pink puff, but he is super tough. Kirby games are known for being kiddie, but does that make the Kirby series as a whole bad? Hell no! The Kirby series is near perfect platforming with an awesome gimmick of taking the abilities of enemies and using them yourself. The level designs and secrets put the use of these copy abilities to good use too. Also, music in Kirby games are awesome and always charming and catchy. My favorite Kirby game is Kirby's Return to Dreamland, which is one of a few Kirby games to feature an actual story. It also added the super abilities, which were really cool and fun to use. The bosses were awesome and the soundtrack is one of the best ever. Kirby's a franchise that has gone relatively unnoticed compared to Mario and even Sonic, but I don't see why. Kirby games are always fun and quirky and cute, which cements the Kirby franchise at number 6. I rarely hear people talk about the Okami franchise, and honestly, I don't see why. Both Okami and its sequel, Okamiden, were phenomenal games that are incredibly overlooked for whatever reason. They both feature incredible stories, likable characters, and some of the best gameplay in an action exploration platformer. The games play very similarly to Zelda games, but instead of getting weapons in dungeons, you attain brush powers used to solve puzzles and beat enemies. And while Okamiden for the DS was an amazing game, it isn't quite as good as its predecessor, Okami. Okami was for a while my favorite game of all time until it just recently got beaten out, and just barely. The story was amazing, the symbolism was real, the music was incredible, and the characters were likable, and the game was just incredibly enjoyable. The dungeons were somewhat linear, but they were far from easy. The bosses are the best out of any video game ever, and certain parts of the game are guaranteed to make you either cry or laugh. The Okami games are underrated as hell, and they shouldn't be. If you have a Wii, get Okami now, you will not be disappointed, I guarantee it. To be honest, the only reason that this franchise is so low is because there are only 2 games in the franchise, Okami and Okamiden, and while they were both phenomenal, this franchise would definitely have been higher had there been more games. But the 2 games this franchise does contain were incredible and are some of my favorite games of all time. So, if you play them, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it 100%. Unless you're Josh Scorcher, in which case you're just wrong. I think it was pretty obvious that the Super Smash Bros. Would make this list. There's pretty much nothing I can say about this series that hasn't already been said, so I'll make this really short. The Smash Bros. Series is some of the smoothest and most addicting gameplay of all time, and if you haven't played a Smash Bros. Game, well, you've just made a huge mistake in your life. I believe the best game in the series is Super Smash Bros. Melee. It had the smoothest controls and the best character roster, as well as some kick-ass music. If you haven't played a Smash Bros. Game, get a life, and get a Wii or GameCube, and play a Smash Bros. Game. If you can't get Melee, Brawl is good too, and when Smash Bros. 4 comes out, I'm sure it won't disappoint. It never does, and I'm sure it never will. Everyone knew the plumber would make it high on the list. Mario makes it so high because he's had so many different games of so many different genres. Whether it be platformers, RPG, racing, sports, and even entertainment for little kids. However, no matter what game Mario is in, the game is almost always fun. Obviously, his platformers are more well known, but I, for the most part, prefer the RPGs. However, the game that makes this list is a platformer, Super Mario Galaxy. The level design was near flawless, the story was better than the usual plot, and the music. Oh god, the music! Super Mario Galaxy is one of, if not the best, of Koji Kondo's works. Every track is standout, and it makes for an unforgettable experience. Something I forgot to mention about the Mario franchise is the characters. Just pretend you don't love the whole cast. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, Yoshi, the Koopa Kids, and important side characters such as Rosalina and Fawful. Each character is incredibly loved, and for good reason. They are fun, and each have their own personalities. Although Mario himself does nothing more than save princesses trapped in a different castle, his games are incredible. Plus, he gets extra points for dragging the video game industry out of its depression. Thank goodness for that. Otherwise, none of the franchises on this list would even exist. Thank you so much, Mario. Your efforts will not be forgotten. The best-selling Nintendo franchise, number 2, is Pokemon. Each and every handheld main series Pokemon game sells like a gold-encrusted hot dog, and for good reason. They're always fun. Sure, the stories aren't usually good, but they can sometimes be interesting. But it's the competitive aspect of Pokemon that gets it this high. If you haven't figured out already, I am a huge fan of competitive Pokemon. Having a Pokemon battle against an experienced player is some of the most fun in video game history. Plus, Pokemon games have infinite replay value due to the near infinite possibilities of team members you can have, with over 700 Pokemon to choose from. Not only are the main series games great, but the spin-offs rarely let down. XD and Coliseum, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Battle Revolution, and the Mystery Dungeon series are great examples of this. But my favorite game in the franchise has it all. Good story, lots to do after the game is over, and a great competitive battle scene. It's Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver. Gen 2 is my favorite generation, with Generation 6 being close behind, but I feel like Heart Gold and Soul Silver improved so much on the originals and had overall the best quality. It also had the most to do, with 16 gyms instead of the usual 8, and a battle with yourself from the first game. With awesome gameplay and competition, the Pokemon franchise is easily deserving of the number 2 spot. What could possibly beat it? Well, let's recap. Number 10, Wii Sports. Number 9, Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 8, Fire Emblem. Number 7, Final Fantasy. Number 6, Kirby. Number 5, Okami. Number 4, Super Smash Bros. Number 3, Super Mario Bros. And number 2, Pokemon. What could possibly be number 1? Number 1 is a franchise that has withstood the test of time for 26 years. The franchise has never once made a bad game, at least not in the main series. Things like story, gameplay, and music are simply astounding for this franchise and every game in it. Never has a franchise lasted longer and seen more games than The Legend of Zelda. When a franchise is still running 26 years later than it began, you know it must be good. And The Legend of Zelda is more than just good. I've yet to play a main series Zelda title I didn't absolutely love. I'll break down why I love this franchise so much. First, the stories of each game. Stories in each of the Zelda games are all pretty similar, with a villain trying to attain some higher power, be it the Triforce or not, and Link trying to prevent that from happening, sometimes saving Princess Zelda along the way. The events along the way during that journey, and the changes in Link and the side characters are really what makes the Zelda story stand out. I've yet to play a Zelda game with a bad story. Gameplay. Gameplay in Zelda has changed a lot over the course of its lifetime. From simply hitting the B button to swinging the Wii remote to even full touchscreen controls, gameplay in Zelda is wonderful. Sword fighting is awesome, and using items you get in dungeons to solve puzzles is so satisfying that I can't even explain it. And even though the control schemes are differing and evolving, they have never been bad. Yes, I liked the controls of both Skyward Sword and Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, games that are sometimes bashed on for poor controls. I don't get why. For me, all three of those games controlled great. Music. Koji Kondo has never let down on music for this incredible franchise. If you don't believe me, watch my top 10 Zelda songs list and see why the music is so freaking awesome. Side quests. Side quests are abundant, but they never feel like fetch quests, and you're always properly rewarded for them. Dungeons. The dungeons in Zelda games are challenging at times, but always satisfying and almost never frustratingly difficult. Bosses. The bosses rarely let down, and replay value in most Zelda titles is there just due to the immense fun factor the games hold. My favorite Zelda title also holds the title of my favorite game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Simply put, best music, best story, second best bosses, second best dungeons, best controls and gameplay, beautiful aesthetics as the art style is gorgeous, and near perfect difficulty, never too easy nor too hard. If you haven't played Wind Waker yet, grab your GameCube or Wii U and pop it in. It's not only a game, but an experience. This is Zoroarkofthenight, and The Legend of Zelda is the best franchise of all time. If you haven't played a Zelda game, stop watching this video and pick one up now. You will not regret it. Thanks so much for watching this video, and be sure to stop by when a new one comes out. Peace!